Time Thieves are an archetype I don't really hear much people talk about. They were a TCG exclusive that came out in Savage Strike, and apparently have connections to S-Force, as seen in S-Force Showdown. They also take inspiration from Doctor Who, and their OCG name is Chrono Diver. Now that we have that out of the way, I just want to say that I have an actual hyperfixation when it comes to story that have to do with time. And yes, I used to be one of those kids that shouted at the top of my lungs while everyone stared at me like I belonged in an insane asylum. Time Thief Adjuster is level 4 with 1200 attack and 1800 defense. If you normal or special summon a Time Thief monster, except this card, and except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one Time Thief card from your deck to the graveyard except this card, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn. As you can tell, it's good for extra deck material for when you summon your Xyz monsters. It also serves as graveyard setup for other Time Thieves that do have graveyard effects. Time Thief Winder is level 4 with 1800 attack and 1300 defense. You can detach one material from an Xyz monster you control, special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Time Thief card from your deck to your hand except this card, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn. Detaching a material to special summon this card might seem risky to a new player, but in actual reality, it isn't. This archetype focuses on taking your opponent's resources for their own effects by making them an Xyz material. Plus, this card is really great for searching. Time Thief Bazel's ship is a level 4 with 1000 attack and 2000 defense. Quick effect, you contribute this card and target one Time Thief monster you control and attach one card from your opponent's graveyard and attach it to his material. If this card is in the graveyard, you can detach one Xyz material from an Xyz monster you control to special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only activate each of these effects once per turn. This is essentially DD Crow, but helps boost your Xyz monsters. It can also help with either activating the first again if you really need more materials, or for more Xyz summons. Oh, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure this is a reference to the TARDIS? Time Thief Chronocoder is a monster with 1000 attack and defense. During your opponent's battle phase, you contribute this card. The next battle damage you take from an opponent's attack this turn is inflicted to your opponent instead. If a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only activate each of these effects once per turn. It helps put your opponent's attacking to a halt depending on their life points and their board. Though, because your opponent knows how to read, this effect won't kick off all the time. The second effect though is good for recovery. Time Thief Regulator is a monster with 600 attack and 200 defense. If you control no other monsters, you contribute this card to special summon 2 Time Thief monsters from your deck in defense position except this card. When an Xyz monster you control is destroyed by battle while this is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only activate each of these effects once per turn. Not a good card in terms of stats of being a level 4, however, this card isn't going to be here for long. That's because this card is supposed to help you get your Xyz monster out a lot more quickly. Just make sure this card is the first one you're playing, unless you're searching by using your spell and traps. Time Thief Temporal Wall is a straight up dueling with motorcycles like it's f***ing 5Ds with the effect. You contribute this card, then target one monster your opponent controls, banish it until the end phase. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one Time Thief monster you control except this card and return it to the hand, and if you do, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each of these effects once per turn. Thank God we can use each of these effects and not just one of them per turn. Its revival effect can be pretty costly for the archetype, so it's best to make sure that the monster can be special summoned, or if you have any other cards that can help you with your Xyz plays. Time Thief Flyback is a normal trap that reads: target one Time Thief Xyz monster you control. Attach one Time Thief card from your hand or deck to it as material. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Time Thief Xyz monster you control. Attach one card from your opponent's graveyard as material. You can only use one Time Thief Flyback effect per turn, and only once that turn. It has a very strict once per turn effect where you can only activate one of these effects, so you have to wait 2 more turns in order to ruin your opponent's graveyard setup with just one card. So if your opponent has something like Skystrike or Rye in the graveyard, you'll be ruining their backup plans. Time Thief Pack is a continuous spell card that reads: during the turn they were special summoned, Xyz monsters you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Also, your opponent cannot target them with card effects. You can target one face-up Xyz monster you control. It gains 300 attack for each material currently attached to it until the end of this turn, and if it has material owned by your opponent, it can attack directly this turn even if this card leaves the field. You can only use this effect once per turn. First off, I got really annoyed with that first sentence because this shouldn't even be a long sentence at all. It should be simplified to target or destroy, that way it's simply both at the same time. It would be a lot more simple that way. Anyway, this card is very good for protection and straight up jumping your opponent from what I would like to imagine stealing their J's as well. And attack boosting too. Time Thief Power Reserve is a continuous trap card that reads, special summon this card as a normal monster, and it becomes a Psychic Dark with level 4 with 1900 attack and 2500 defense. Then you can special summon one Machine Time Thief monster from your hand deck or graveyard. If you control an Xyz monster that has both a spell and trap as material, you can banish this card from your graveyard and banish one card in the field, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn. And it's a trap monster, meaning it's a bit slow to summon. On the other hand, its graveyard effect is also there for non-targeting banishing. If you do manage to summon this card, it can help you with your extra deck plays, or if you're desperate enough, get a monster on the field. Time Thief Retrograde is a counter trap that reads, when a spell or trap is activated while you control a Time Thief Xyz monster, negate the activation. And if you do, attach that card to a Time Thief Xyz monster you control as material. You can only activate this effect once per turn. It's a really good card for negation, and it's likely that you'll get a Time Thief Xyz monster in one turn. Though if you're not able to summon your Time Thief Xyz monster, then I would rather just suggest Solemn Judgment. Time Thief Startup is a quick play spell card that reads, special summon one Time Thief monster from your hand. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Then target one Time Thief Xyz monster you control and attach 3 Time Thief cards to it as material from the graveyard. And they have to be one monster, one spell, and one trap. You can only use one Time Thief startup effect once per turn and only once that turn. It's great just in case your monster's effect gets negated in order to special summon another Time Thief monster. The second effect though is good for later game when you have more graveyard setup. And it's good for this next card we're about to go over, heading into the extra deck lineup. Time Thief Redoer is a rank 4 with 2400 attack and 2000 defense. Once per turn during the standby phase, you can attach the top card from your opponent's deck into this card of this material. Quick effect, you can detach up to 3 different types of materials from this card, applying the following effects. If it's a monster, you can banish this card until the end phase. If it's a spell, you can draw 1 card, and if it's a trap, you can place 1 card your opponent controls and put it on top of the deck. You can only activate this effect once per turn. This is a really good staple for any Xyz deck since it's not specific. Since this has a quick effect, you can banish this card on your first turn when your opponent starts targeting this card and bring more shenanigans later. The trap effect is especially good because putting a card on top of the deck is really good for ruining combos. Time Thief Perpetua is a rank 4 with 1900 attack and 2500 defense. During your standby phase, you can detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 Time Thief monster in your graveyard except this card, special summon that monster. Quick effect, you can target 1 other Xyz monster you control, attach 1 Time Thief card from your deck to it as material, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn. This is good for supporting Time Thief Redoer for allowing you to put 1 more material into it and applying more effects. And its recovery effect for other Time Thief monsters is really good for more extra deck plays for any other rank 4 generic summons. Time Thief Double Barrel is a rank 4 with 2200 attack and defense. When your opponent activates a card or effect, you can detach up to 3 materials from this card, monster, spell, or trap, then apply the following effects that was detached. If it was a monster, this card gains 400 attack. If it's a spell, take control of 1 monster your opponent controls until the end phase, and cannot declare an attack or activate its effects this turn. And if it's a trap, negate the effects of 1 effect monster on the field until the end of this turn. You can only use this effect once per turn. The monster effect is maybe good, unless there's a card out there that does generic attack boosting while during the damage step, then I would see this a little bit useful. The spell effect can only be useful during the main phase too if you want to use that monster you took for an extra deck material. And the trap effect is a really big useful one here. Since you can only activate this effect during when your opponent activates a card, then you can pretty much use this effect to counter it. My only pet peeve is that if Redoer is on the artwork here, why does it have lower stats? This is a very fun deck to play. Granted, it's not meta or anything, but it's really good for casual play. There is a card that can be very good once it comes worldwide called Sacrifice Level Up. It'll help Time Thief pretty much go into Cyber Dragon Nova, and then go into Infinity. This archetype also hosts with other generic 4s in case you need other effects. It gets an 8 out of 10. I'm OP Soper, signing off. Now on to the replays.